So it's my pleasure to introduce the first speaker to you. It's Pieter Colpaert, who will give maybe a sneak preview of his PhD, who will be presenting next week. So thank you, Pieter, for making time for this. And the talk will be about open data. Pieter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will, in fact, just do the introduction of my PhD, almost like my PhD thing, but will not get into the academics side. So, first of all, why do we want to get into open data? Why is this something we really need to invest time and money in? Well, we live in quite some challenging times, I think. And who of you know about the Kardashev Scale? Is there someone who knows the Kardashev Scale? No, maybe some people are laughing, so perhaps they know about it. But it's something from science fiction, where you create a classification of civilizations, and you try to classify them by how good they would be able to survive in extreme conditions. For instance, what would happen if your planet would have global warming or something like that? Would you be able to survive? And then the second stage is then whether you will be able to survive that your star dies out, and so on. It goes on. But today we are at phase 0. We would not, or it's very challenging whether we actually will go to the first level or not. And in all these kind of literature about the Kardashev Scale, like one thing is really important, one sign is that you can see is really important, is a good communication medium, like a good channel where everyone can communicate with each other, where everyone can share knowledge and so on. If we have that, then we can actually live with more people on one small place. Just like ancient Rome, where also like a lot of people live together. Well, if you then see in the Middle Ages, like nobody all of a sudden was able to live together in like one city. Well, just because, well, we didn't have a good information system anymore, where people would just spread information around that wasn't available anymore. So open data is in fact saving the world. So, and if you don't believe that, I will tell you something else as motivation. Good. But open data, what is that? And I'm sure everyone already here worked with open data. Everyone visited already Wikipedia. Yeah. Some of you will probably know about OpenStreetMap. It's like the Wikipedia, but for maps. Like you can add your own street in there. You can play with it. You probably already have seen it on Emotnet. Everyone has already visited Emotnet, where it's used as a layer to show maps to people. But that's actually OpenStreetMap is behind that. It's open data, and also Stack Overflow. The developers over here in the room will for sure know Stack Overflow. That's where they actually type their questions, and they see user-contributed answers to all their questions, developer questions. Well, that's also open data. It's openly licensed, so everyone can do whatever with that kind of data, can sell it as a book, and so on. Now, another kind of open data would be public transit company data or time schedules. That's also very important, right? If over the entire world we succeed in making sure that timetables are in a good way disseminated for everyone available, so they can reuse it, so they know when to take a certain train, that would be awesome. And actually, the Belgian Railway Company is working on that a bit, step by step, slowly. The lane as well. Also MEVB STIP, also tech, and also on a European level, they're trying to make that happen. And in a lot of fields, you will see that there will be some regulations in order to open up data or to structure data better, to link data better together. That's all part of open data. Now, another one is from the academic side. It's in fact one example of it's a bit small, but it's a map where you actually see frequencies of birds passing by on that specific location. So it's people from a Flemish university, or it's INBO, Institute for Biodiversity in Belgium, that actually added sensors to seagulls. And they added sensors to seagulls. They let them fly away. They track the data. They store it on their system. They do research with that. And after that research, they decided, hey, we can put it open on the web. We can give it away as open data, so that other people can also do research with that. That's also a good use case for open data. And then the third one is so we had somewhere in the collaborative sphere, we had something about private companies, we had something about, although that's debatable, we had something about academics, and now we have an example of government. The government also publishes data. Why? For instance, if you have an address register, and this is actually a screenshot from the central database in Flanders, where they now opened up all the officially registered addresses. Really important, because right now a certain company, if they would actually want to know whether an address existed, the only way to do that would be to send a postcard and to see whether it returns. So in order, the economic value created by just making sure that people can check whether an address actually exists is pretty relevant, I think. But these are four isolated projects. The real added value, I think, from open data is if all these different parties, they also from other use cases, that they publish data in a similar way. If we have that, if they start to publish data in a similar way, we can actually also query over them. So I could answer questions like, what's the route to work with the highest probability to see a water bird? So if you would be able to do that, maybe there's a water bird lover in the audience. I don't know, someone who lives. No? Well, there's always this this thing that you don't know at the beginning when you start to publish data what people are going to use your data for. And that's a nice example. It's a stupid question, but I want people to be able to answer that question, because there are a lot of other questions that can be answered. A side note: this data is also open data. It's from the LifeWatch project. It's also funded by the European Commission. It's awesome. Good. Let us think like a data publisher. If you want to share data between two systems, that's something probably all of us have at some point already done. Like we've created an Excel file and we've sent it via email to someone else, right? That's sharing data between two parties. So you ask them, in what format do you want the data? You have maybe a meeting about the model of your data, and you make sure that certain questions can be answered over your system. But sharing data on the web is a bit more difficult. So give the data publisher. So if you're a reuser, please give the data publisher some slack, because it's a new thing. It's like all of a sudden you have your system as a data publisher, where all these people that you don't know all of a sudden have to get access to your data. They don't know about your data model. They don't know about how you share the technical means. They don't know about the legal constraints. So in fact, every one of these parties that you don't know would have to phone you and would make arrangements about all these different things. And I think it's a challenge to try to automate these phone calls. That's actually the real challenge behind open data today still, I think. Let's think like a data consumer, because if I'm one of these data consumers that you don't know, let's change the picture. We are that guy that wants to, or girl, of course, that wants to reuse the certain data sets. Well, we don't see your system, and we don't see your data model, and we don't see things. We just see a bunch of things on the web, a lot of data sets, and we want as quick as possible to be able to reuse it. Let's go back to my example of the city of Rome and how to make sure that more people can live together. Well, in fact, we could translate that towards making sure that one person can reuse as much data as possible. That's in fact what you want to achieve. You want to be able to answer certain questions over as much data as possible. So from the moment that we start automating this, that's the moment where magic will happen in the environment of open data. So if you're a data reuser in the room, that also takes a bit of rethinking about how you reuse the data itself. You need to try to find these common things among these common aspects of certain data sets among all the data sets that are published online, so that you can know, like, if I just write my code for this data set, it will automatically also work for another data set. And that's also a challenge still. But the first and foremost thing of open data is legal certainty. This is a friend of mine, Jeri, who we were studying, or we were school pals, and we started to reuse the data from the Belgian railway company, and we actually didn't get oh, thank you for making this awesome mobile website. Now we got a cease and desist letter saying you have to stop using your data. It's pirate data, they would call it. You are infringing on copyright. So afterwards, we did what every student would do. We just published it online, and we said, no, we won't take it offline. And by doing that, in fact, there was an entire debate about this data, and right now, SNCB, or the Belgian Railway Company, actually has to publish their data. But you don't want this legal uncertainty where you all of a sudden can get a cease and desist letter for your system. So what do we want? Well, that's why we created the open definition. So at opendefinition.org, you can find a very simple definition of open data. And this definition, the only aspect of it is a legal one. So it's not a technical one, it's just make sure that your data is openly licensed, so that someone, a reuser, can just visit the dataset, can discover, it's an open license, so I can just work with this data without any hassle. There we go. So we want the world. We want a world where knowledge creates power for the many, not the few. That's the baseline of Open Knowledge International. And from the moment that we have this legal certainty, then we can get into making sure that we automate these technical challenges. And that's what my colleague Niels from imec is going to talk about.